All that we need now is a configuration file for the alert manager to tell it to send alerts to, in our case, Slack. I'm here on the Prometheus documentation page, specifically on the alerting configuration section. And as described here, we can set up a configuration file. This configuration file is really quite rich. It allows us to send the alerts to different destinations depending on, for example, the severity of each alert. And it also allows us to integrate with a wide range of destinations. Just starting with these different configs here. Out of the box, it can easily integrate with email, HipChat, PagerDuty, Pushover, Slack, which we're about to look at, OpsGenie, VictorOps, and WeChat. But apparently they're not going to be adding any more of these integrations because in the future they're expecting all integrations to be done through a webhook. I don't know how many of these you're familiar with, but of course we're focusing on Slack. So as I say, this configuration file is quite rich. But to get started, I've already prepared a basic configuration file which will be suitable for this demonstration. And we need to copy this across and apply it. I think probably the hardest thing to grasp when working with alerts for the first time is the concept of grouping. So let's have a look at this file. First of all, we're going to set up a global variable called Slack API URL, and that's going to be that webhook URI that Slack gave us. But then we're able to set up a set of routes. I only have one route here and we won't go too far on this course because I don't want to go on too long about this. We could configure, for example, critical messages to go to an SMS receiver and all other messages maybe to go to the Slack receiver. And in that case, we'd just set up a configuration for SMS here. I think it's this grouping which people find the hardest to grasp at first. I have a very good example. You'll remember that I have this very annoying node disk running full alert which has triggered. I believe that's a spurious warning, but the really annoying thing is we have got, it looks like something like 60 of these node disk running full alerts. And the 60 of them, because each of them are slightly different. These first two, for example, are for different instances. And these two are for the same instance, but it's a different mount point that it's complaining about. So what's basically happened here is at pretty much the same time, for me it was 12 o'clock and 48 seconds, a whole group of these warnings has been generated all at the same time. This is going to be very annoying if all of these alerts all just go streaming into the Slack channel. We're going to be overwhelmed with alerts, which I'm thinking really caused by the same root cause. Whatever the root cause is, it's the same root cause. It would be even more annoying if I was generating text messages that are being sent to an engineer's mobile phone and it's 5 o'clock in the morning or something and they get 60 incoming text messages. So for that reason, it's very important that the alert manager has grouping rules. And that's what this configuration is here. So line 4 is saying that any alerts that have the same name are going to be considered part of the same group. So these messages then are all considered part of the same group. We have some configurations on when we're going to send notifications. I'll come back to group weight in a minute. I think the group interval is the important one. So this is currently set to 1 minute, and you'll need to think about tuning this in real life. But as things stand, this is going to take all messages that belong to this group over the period of a minute, and it's only going to send one notification for all of those alerts. So in our example, this one and this one and this one, and I can keep going. In fact, many of these messages possibly, right, okay, I can see all those I've highlighted were at the same time, so they'll definitely be grouped together into a single alert, whereas this one here, I'll need to do some maths. Okay, well this was a few seconds later, but it was still less than a minute later, so Now, I haven't gone through all of these alerts to see exactly what the timestamps are, but it's looking very much like these are all going to be grouped into a single notification, maybe 2 or 3. So that's so important. The group weight, I think, is a little bit less important. Now, the idea of setting a group weight, and it's usually set to a very short period of time, it could be 0 seconds, in fact, but a small number of seconds, is saying that when an alert comes in for a particular group, just wait 5 seconds before sending the initial notification. And the reason for that is sometimes you will get alerts firing which are just something strange happened, a glitch or something like that, and immediately that alert gets resolved. So it was never really a problem. So this group wait just says, just have this short period to check that it isn't a glitch. And if it gets immediately resolved, then it might not need to send a notification at all. Now, another setting which does confuse is the repeat interval, which I've currently set to 1 hour. I think to illustrate this one, perhaps the best example is the dead man's switch. Now, the time for me currently is 17:34. I've spent so long recording this video. I've had all kinds of problems, so I've actually been now working on this for the last 8 hours. This dead man switch alarm started ringing, if you like, at 11:30 this morning. Now, I want you to be aware that it's not a case that a notification is sent just when an alarm first triggers. In fact, a notification is sent regularly, as long as this alarm is ringing. And it's based on this configuration here. Any alarm which has not been resolved will be repeated, in our case, every hour. And you'll remember that the purpose of the dead man switch is it never gets resolved. So we are going to expect to see, as soon as we apply this configuration, that we should get a dead man switch message appearing in our Slack channel immediately and thereafter every hour. And it would be the same for the other alerts as well, at least until they are resolved. So I think for the purposes of the demo, I wouldn't do this in real life, but I think for the purposes of the demo, I'm going to drop this repeat interval down to, I've got to be careful here, I don't want the Slack channel filling up with rubbish, but I think I'm going to go for a 10-minute interval, just so we can see the result of that when we go across to Slack. In real life, you need to configure this repeat interval according to your needs. If this were an text message that you're sending to that poor engineer in bed, then you maybe don't want to even be sending that every hour. So it might be that you only repeat the notifications every 6 hours, for example, because really the expectation is once the initial notification has been sent, somebody should be working on the problem to resolve it. I'm not going to go any further than this for the course because this video is getting long enough now, but I hope you can see that we can provide multiple routes or routes and we can supply different configurations. Now, I don't have it in my configuration, but we can provide a set of regex matches which allows us to do matches on labels and values. And you've seen that all of these alerts have lots of labels and values. I could put one of those matches in where the severity is a warning. We'll just send it to the Slack channel maybe, and perhaps just repeat that every 12 hours. But if we have a severity of critical, then we'll send it to an SMS receiver and we can tune the repeat intervals accordingly. I think this is enough for this demonstration. So we've said that this group is going to be sent to the Slack channel. All that remains really is just basic configuration. This is the name of the channel it's going to be sent to. This is the icon that I want to be displayed. I've gone for the bell icon. This is an interesting one actually. This is saying when an alarm has been resolved, so that would be whatever metric triggered that alert has now gone back to normal, do we want to send a message saying everything's okay now? We want to see resolved notifications. And finally, this is just configuring what text do we want to appear in the Slack message. It's just going to be a summary of the problem. I hope that's given you a good flavour for what we can do in these configurations. What we need to do now is apply this configuration.